Hello everyone, welcome to the third video in our series. In this video we are going to be finishing off the tutorial game. Where we finished off last time, we had just created the enemies and the main scene, so we should be somewhere a little bit like this where we have a game that we can play, but unfortunately when we die nothing really happens other than the enemies eventually swim off the screen and that's it, we're done. So we're going to do the last two sections today, which is around the heads-up display and the messaging of the screen, basically. So it's a start button when you finish the game and so forth. And then we're also going to look at the last section, which is sound effects and things along that nature. So let's have a look at where we are. We're looking at the heads-up display, okay, and that's, as I said, going to do most of our messaging to the player. So we're going to be creating a new scene, and it's going to be called the HUD, and it's going to start with this new idea called a canvas layer. So let's go to scene, new scene, and we will search for a canvas layer. So there it is. Now, canvas layer, you should read through what that actually means and what it does in the instructions as we've seen before. But what we're really seeing now, we're certainly in this third part where it is just giving us a list of what we need to do. Almost in dot, well, it is in fact in dot form, and it's really relying on you to now remember how to add different nodes, how to rename them, and so forth. So let's add in the things that we need. So first of all, let's actually rename that to HUD. It is in capital letters, so make sure you get that correct. We are going to add some new nodes. We're going to add a label. Now, a label is something we haven't seen before, but it's very easy. It's just a place for text to go. We're also adding a button, another new node we haven't done. Now, I'm not searching at the moment because I have used these, of course, before, so they're in my recent, so I'm just using it from there. But if you've never looked at them before, you probably would need to search. And a timer. Now, we have certainly done timers in the last section. So there are the four children that we need, and of course, we need to rename those. So we have a score label. Again, please make sure you get your capitalizations correct. We have this one just called message. We have the button, which is going to be called start button. And we have our timer, which we're calling message timer. Okay, so we've renamed everything. Moving down, it says that we need to go to the score label and type a number into the text field of its inspector. So score label, if you're like me and you're not in 2D, you might want to flip back to that. But we are looking over here to the inspector and we're looking for the text field. And at the moment, because of the way my screen is positioned, it's just to the bottom. But I'm just going to put a 0 in there for now, just so I can see some text in that box there. We're also going to change the font, okay, so that's explained a little bit further down here, but basically with the score label still chosen, we're going to come down here to the theme overrides, okay, we're going to come down further to the fonts, and we're going to add in a font. Now in here they talk about how to load it in, and you certainly can do that, and you might want to do it the first time, but I'm going to grab my font from over here in my resources. So when we brought in the resources, one of the folders was fonts, and here is the font that we're using. So I'm going to save some time and just drag that across to the empty spot, and I've now chosen that font. I also want to change the size, so a little bit further down, font size to be 64. So you can see that 0 that I've entered has come up nice and big, and it's going to be really easy to read. We also want to use some anchors. Now, anchors are a good way of positioning things sort of at set points of your game, and it's especially useful if you might have a game screen that is going to be resized so they stay proportional and in position to each other. So with the score label still selected, I'm coming up here to my anchors, and I want this one to be top center or center top. And you'll see when I click that, it's going to come to the center top of my screen. So there we go, we have done that part. Now we need to make appropriate changes to all the other nodes that we put on. So we've already done all the score labels. Oh, actually, I did forget one thing. You can see horizontal alignment and vertical alignment to also be center. So again, if I come back into here, I want to look for my, now I always forget where that is. Let's see if I can remember from the top. No, okay, I think it's in layout. No. Oh, where is it? Okay. Oh, sorry, it's right at the top. I always forget that. I think it's down here with the font area. It's actually right at the top here. So horizontal alignment, I want that to be centered, and the vertical alignment also to be centered. That way, if the text area gets bigger, it's going to keep that font the text nicely in the middle. Now let's go on to what we're talking about, which is to make appropriate changes to the rest of it. So with the message field, we want to add this text, dodge the creeps, with that exclamation mark. So I'm going to copy and paste that in. We also want to set its horizontal and vertical alignment to be center. So here we are, centered and centered. Then we're going to come down and we're going to also turn this auto wrap mode to be set to word. Okay, so just underneath that, we'll set that to word. And you'll see what that means. It wraps each individual word instead of trying to fit it all in one line. That's going to be important in just a moment. Now we come a bit further down to the control layout. So coming down here, control layout, and we want to set the X size and Y size in the transform area. So here it is. So the size for X is going to be set to 480, and we're not setting the Y, sorry, just the size for X. So X is going to be 480, which makes it the same width as our game at the moment. And we're going to use an anchor preset of center. So back to our anchor presets, and here is the center one. So that'll move it down to the center of our gameplay area. If I just make it a bit smaller, we should be able to see all of the gameplay space. There it is. So here is my entire gameplay space, and this has now been centered. We're also going to do the same font settings. So scroll down further to theme overrides, to fonts, bring in that same font, and also set its size to 64. So you can see that it's fitting that nicely in. We want our start button now. So again, we'll add the text of start. We're going to set the control layout transform area. So down here to control layout transform. We're going to set the X to 200 and the Y to 100. So the size of X to 200 and the size of Y to 100. Just making a nice rectangular button ready. We're also going to choose the anchor preset to be at the bottom. So here we go, anchor preset at the bottom. So it's all the way at the bottom. But then under control, transform, layout, etc. Again, we're going to change the Y position. So we use the anchor to make it come down center. We're going to change the Y to be 500. Whoops, I did that very badly. Let's come back in again. I've lost my game. I always forget how to bring that back quickly. There it is. Sorry. That's a good learning for everyone. If you do some really weird zooming like I did accidentally, that is the little icon to bring it back to the center essentially. So what I was trying to do is come in here to the Y position and set that to be 500. Except that was the transform, sorry. I want the position of Y to be 500. That's better, and you can just see that's moved it up. But it's keeping it horizontally centered and it's relative to the bottom of the screen. So that's still a good way to do that. We're also going to fix up the font for that. So theme overrides, fonts, bring in the font file, and also change the font size to be 64. And that is starting to look a lot better. Last couple of things we want is the message timer. We're going to set its wait time to be 2. So that's how long it's going to essentially time for. And this one-shot property to be on. So that means the timer will go off, but it won't restart automatically. Okay, so when it goes off, it gets one time to do it. And unless we manually restart the timer, it's not going to happen again. All right, that's all of sort of our setup. So we should be looking a little bit like this now. And it's time to start adding some code. So making sure our HUD is selected, let's add a code block to that. I'm going to make sure that I'm saving it in my scripts folder because that's what I'm doing at the moment, and create. Now it's extending canvas layer, that's fine, I've already got that there, and we've got a signal that we're going to be doing. So I'm going to copy that out and paste it in. So we're going to have this signal called start game that our HUD is going to be able to trigger and send out to other parts of our program to interact with. We're then going to add this code. It's a new block called function show message, and this is going to be used to basically show a message using our message label that we tell it. So we're going to pass some text in via this variable here, and we'll be able to show that message using our message label. And after the timer goes off, I'm going to assume in a moment we'll add some code to hide that message. Right, let's now look at the next thing, what happens when the player loses. So we have another new function here called game over. So let's add that in. Paste that in there. In fact, what I'll do is I'll get rid of these ones we had so they're just not in the way for the moment. So the game over message is going to get shown using the function we just made up the top, sending the words game over. It's going to trigger the timer, and when it runs out, basically, we'll continue on. It's then going to use the same message to say dodge the creeps again, and it's going to await that timeout happening. Okay, so we're looking pretty good at the moment. You can read through that obviously properly there. We're now going to add the update score function. So again, the HUD is sort of controlling things that are going on. So it is looking for the score to be updated. So we're going to send it a score value, and it's going to basically show that value using our score label, the one that we currently have 0 in. Now it says we need to connect some things. So let's connect the pressed signal of the start button. So start button nodes the pressed signal, and it needs to be connected, and also the timeout signal of the message timer. So message timer, timeout signal also being connected. Okay, and that's going to be these two functions that we have here. So because the function names were just created for us, I'm just going to copy in the code that goes into each of those. So this is with a button pressed, and this is going to be the timeout for the message. The button pressed is simply going to hide the start button and then send out that signal of start game, so something else can be recognizing that. And the message timeout is simply going to hide the message box so that we can't see it anymore. Right, now here's the very important stuff. We're going to connect our HUD to our main. So now that we've been doing this, let's make sure we save this scene. So scene save. Let's save that in our scenes and save it as the HUD. That is fine. Right, so now that we've done creating that HUD, we're going to go back to our main. So I've still got to open here, our main scene, and we're going to create an instance of our HUD. Okay, it's important that that instance goes at the bottom so that it's drawn on top of everything else. So when I instance it in by using the little chain there, and I say, yep, give me a copy of HUD, it did go down the bottom by default. If it didn't, make sure you move it down. Okay, we're going to be connecting the HUD's start game signal, but we're going to be connecting that, I should say, to the new game method that exists in our main script. So if we're looking at our main script at the moment, if we have a look through, we have currently a method that we made, or a function, sorry, called new game. There it is. So we want to connect this start game to this one that's already there. And this is something we haven't done a lot of. So let's have a look. If we go start game for the HUD, we want it to go to main. So what we can do is come down here. Now we could type the function name in and hope that we've got exactly the right one, or make sure we type it exactly right. But we can also go pick, and that will then show us all the function names that are in that file. So we can see here is the new game that we want. So we can choose it and say connect. And of course, if we wait a moment, there it is. That is the little connection symbol showing that the function, or the signal is now connected. So that's important. Okay. Also in our new game, we need to update the score and display. So we're going to add this content to our new game functionality. So let's add that down here, and I'll just tab that in properly. And also in our game over function, we need to do this one. So game over, and also I'll just clean up that blank space that I've got for some reason. Now, we have talked about this previously, but this dollar symbol basically is a shortcut for the name of that. So there is our HUD in capitals, which is important. So that's $ is a simple way of saying it is a child of this. Remember, this is our main. Here it is. It's joined there. So the dollar says it's a child called HUD. So that's working out nicely. And finally, we need to add some more code to our on-score timer timeout. So let's have a look for that. On-score timer timeout. We are going to add this bit of code as well. So as well as actually increasing the score, we need to update our HUD to show that score. Okay, we need to also do a bit of temporary removing. So let's remove the call to new game from our underscore ready. So let's come back up underscore ready, and let's take that out to make sure it's now following all the processes. We do need to put the pass back in at the moment because I don't have anything else in my ready. Otherwise you saw that error that popped up. Let's give this a play and see what happens. So we can see all our lovely information. We can see a button that we hover over and it changes. When we press start, we've got our temporary message, it goes away, and then we start seeing our enemies. And there is our game over screen. And of course you saw the score increase, and you can see now the start button has come back as well. So this is starting to look really, really good. Now, as it says here, if we play until the game over, which you saw me do, and then if we start a new game straight away, so let's do that now. So we start a game, we have some enemies on the screen, we die, game over, hit the button, go, they were still there. It's a little bit hard to tell, but they were still on the screen. So what we need to do is get rid of those. Okay, so all the mobs, all the enemies that we have currently need to make sure they get deleted straight away. So in our mob scene, so we'll close the game. So we're going back to our mob scene. In our mob scene, we need to select the root node. There it is. And then in the node tab over here for all our signals, we need to go and also, instead of signals, choose groups. Now, groups is something we haven't looked at before. We're going to add a new group, and this is going to be called, what do they call it? Mobs in lowercase. Now, groups are literally, as the name suggests, a way to group together all of a particular type of node, so you can then refer to them and act on them all together. So essentially, we're going to create this group called mobs. And then you can see down here in our main, so we go back to save that, sorry, and we then save all scenes, we go back to our main scene, into our code, and in our new game, here it is, we're adding in this line of code. So this line basically says, hey, go get our tree, so our entire tree, call a group called mob. So that's a group that we just made. And on that group called mob, so all of the instances of mobs basically, Q3. And we learned earlier that Q3 means to delete them from our game. So that will essentially say every mob, no matter where they are, what they're doing right now, delete them as if they got off the screen. Okay, so again, if we play that now, we probably won't notice a huge difference. And again, it's one of those situations where if you do it just right, start, there you go. You saw how that deleted that mob straight away. So this is looking really, really good now. Let's move on. We've got to go to the next screen, and we're going to finish up with some backgrounds and sound effects. So the default background is obviously not very appealing, as it says here. So we're going to add some more nodes in. So one way to use a color rect, so we're going to put a plain solid color in. So on our main, let's go plus and search for a color rect. Now it is the American spelling, so just keep that in mind. And the only property that the color rect has, if we come back to our inspector, is the color. So I'm going to choose that drop down, and I'm going to give it a sort of bluey green background. You can pick something else if you like. So there I have done that. We're also going to try and use the anchors. Now I'm just going to go back to 2D so I can see it. So there's my color rect. We're going to try and use the anchor. So we're going to use a new anchor called full rect, which basically means it should fill the entire screen. So I come up here and I choose this one here, full rect. It hopefully, there we go, fills my entire screen. So again, if I resize my screen, it should continue to fill it. We can also potentially add a background image. So instead of a color rect, you could use a texture rect. And that's something you can try later on to see if you can add in a background picture. Let's now add some sound. So to do sound, we need to add some audio stream players. So again, as a child of main, there we go, we're going to add an audio stream. In fact, we're going to add 2 audio stream players. So let's go add, let's look for it, audio stream player. Make sure you do the audio stream player 2D. No, just a plain audio stream player. An audio stream player 2D still does positional sound, and that could be a problem for now, whereas audio stream player just by itself just plays straight sound through your speaker. So that's what we're going to stick with, and we're going to add 2 as it says. I'll use the fact that's in my recent there, and whoops, I actually made that a child of the first one, so let's just reparent that by dragging it onto main. They are going to be called music and death sound. So let's rename those. So we've got music, and then we've got death sound. That's pretty ominous. And of course, make sure you get your capitalizations correctly. Now, on the stream of those, the stream basically is the file that it's going to open. We need to choose load and put the appropriate sounds. So again, over here in our resources, we had art fonts. We should also have some sounds. They're in the art for some reason. So we've got a game over, and we've got a house in a forest. So the music is going to be house in the forest. So let's drag that onto there. And the death sound is going to be this game over sound. By default, when we put any music or audio stream player in, its looping is turned off. So if we want to have that loop, and for example the music is something we would like to loop, then we first have to come through to the drop down and make sure that it is a unique sound. Okay, so it just sort of reloads it. And then if we click on this stream, we get a few extra features, and one of those is the loop. So we can click loop, and that way when the audio stream gets to the end, it will automatically start playing again. Okay. We're now going to add in some code to actually play those sounds. So if we come down here, we need to go to our game over. So in our script of main, let's find our game over. Here it is. And at the bottom, we want to add these 2 lines of code, which again are saying find this node called music. It's a child of main, and stop the music because we don't want the music playing anymore when we are dying. And then the same thing, find the death sound node and play its sound. And in the same way, when the new game starts, we want to turn on the background music. So let's go and find that. Here it is. We are going to insert that. And so when the new game starts, we start playing the audio. Now, unfortunately, I don't think I've got computer audio being recorded into this video, but let's have a look. If I press play, you may be able to hear it. I'm just going to chuck my headphones back on for a moment to see if I can hear it. All right, we press start. So I'm certainly hearing audio at the moment, so that's a good sign. And I just heard the bad guy die. But you might have noticed something. My player seems to be not showing up. So I need to work out what's wrong there. And I believe it's simply a level thing. So if I go to my main and I look at my color rect. Oh, actually, I may have said this incorrectly before. It needs to be up the top because I want that to be drawn at the bottom of the pile. So it starts with drawing this and goes down. So this way my player would be drawn in front of the color rect. So let's try that one more time. And when I press my start button, that's better. There's my player. I can play my game. I can die. I can press the start to clear them and have another go. So you may or may not have got audio at that time. I apologize if you couldn't hear it, but you can finish that off. I'm not going to go through this keyboard shortcut. You can do that if you wish. The main reason is just a little bit fiddly, and honestly this video is getting a bit long, and I'm sure if you've been able to follow through this far, then you should also be able to finish off this last little bit. So thank you very much, and have this ready if you're in one of my classes to submit in our next session.